Such a smart idea to take that, like, this is a personal experience I had. This is what it felt like. And I'm going to convey that in language that people have probably seen in other movies and movies that Jane very much likes. And they're movies that obviously we like. So it was like, as soon as Jane was opting for like these, you know, this sort of dreamlike David Lynch style surrealism and this like paranoid transformative body horror anxiety of someone like Cronenberg. I mean, there's so much Videodrome in this. And I almost imagined the fucking main kid being like, television screen is the retina of the mind's eye, as he's shoving his head into like a television screen. And at a certain point, one of the last images of the movie is him opening up his body, very similarly to how James Woods has the videotape shoved into his like chest vagina at a certain point of the movie. And so like that was what ultimately worked for me about this movie, is it conveyed an experience I didn't have, and it made me go, wow, that seems like the worst thing in the universe. And I feel like I understood watching this movie through the aesthetics of it, through the way that it captures existential dread, to the way that it captures this friendship that these two characters have, and how their world feels wrong, and how they have to escape, and how they go about maybe feeling like their current identity is wrong and they need to kill it and they need to pursue a different one, but how scary of a proposition that is and how difficult of a process that actually is. And I think this movie is so good at conveying that experience.
Yeah, I think Schoenbrunn is incredible at giving, like, because this on a autobiographical standpoint, it's, you know, the allegory for being transgender is very apparent, and you have a more obvious scene where the character Owen is in a dress with his friend Maddie. And I was watching it with friends, and they were bringing that up afterwards, and were like, "That was interesting. I wished it dove more into that." And I just found that to be a interesting reaction, because Jane is just so good at like the subtext of it all. This is such a it's so good at making you understand that feeling that you probably have not gone through yourself. And it's so good at it that I think my friends were kind of just feeling it on like a more surface level, in a sense, that they weren't even understanding that. And they probably would, given more thought and everything. It's just that the movie doesn't spoon feed it to you. And I think that that's brilliant, because it allows so much more expression and like the horrifying imagery to come through to express that, like, that feeling. So I hope that made sense, but yeah.
Yeah, no, and I find that response interesting, because I think a lot of people have had that response, and like obviously that moment is very targetedly in there as like one of the few like very explicit details about like what is happening to the main character, Owen, who is going through this kind of identity crisis where he's like, am I comfortable in my current identity, in my current body? I mean, I think one of the first moments where it really hit me is the one line that Fred Durst gets in the movie. Shout out to Limp Bizkit, as the stepdad.
Oh,
and
my God.
Owen is, you know, he's been connecting with this other girl, Maddie, in school, who is a couple years his senior, and they are both really into this TV show, The Pink Opaque, which again is sort of like an Are You Afraid of the Dark or a Buffy the Vampire Slayer, sort of like a teen YA sort of power fantasy, but it deals with the fact that like these girls have a psychic connection and they deal with a monster of the week, and you know for these characters, it's a sort of a cathartic context in which to understand their own estrangement from reality, and maybe these girls could help them liberate. Maybe he wants to be like the girl on the TV show, and it's you know, it's something that I've heard from, you know, some of the trans friends that I know, that sometimes the first experience that they had was watching a show where they went, I feel like that character. And, you know, it wasn't like I want to become that character, but it was like the first time they feel like they saw themselves in another character. And, so that's what Owen is experiencing here. And the thing I found interesting was that I read an interview with Jane, and what they brought up was that for them, I guess they were maybe a little bit of a later transitioner than people that they know. And so Owen's experience was someone who's like, I am feeling like I'm on the cusp of doing it. it feels like I'm being guided in that direction, but I'm like deliberately repressing it and I'm pushing it back, and I don't want to do these things, even though everything is screaming that I should go this way. And I found that that's just such an interesting concept for this character to have to go through. And I think that the performances, both by Justice Smith and by Maddie, who is played by Bridget Lundy Payne, are really, really well done at representing the two different stages of this process, which is that Owen is stuck in this kind of bleak cycle of I'm scared and I'm gonna fight these feelings, even though like my existence is hell and I hate it. And that is also an interesting thing that Jane does, and obviously a thing that by the very end of the film you're just like, how bad could it have been to just jumped and gone for it, man? Because your current existence seems pretty bleak and pretty horrible, and I wouldn't want to be involved in that. And then, but on the Maddie side, she's the one more willing to kind of take that painful, risky leap of I'm going to actually become sort of like the characters on the show, and I'm going to pursue this new identity, and I'm going to kill this old identity that I had. But it's also, you know, she tries to convert Owen, and the style is still done in this very kind of creepy fashion where you're just like, you know, it's I think she has the line where it really summed it up for me, which was that I know it's scary, that's part of it, that's like part of the process, and you're gonna have to overcome that part. But like the style is so good at displaying why someone maybe would repress themselves. It's not an easy thing to do, even though you are alienated and things feel wrong, and the way that she tries to explain it to Owen is there's something wrong. Do you ever